Hello and welcome to an Acceleres webinar video from the series entitled Acceleres Presents. This is part of a series and is focused on System Center Service Manager and Orchestrator SP1, the features and the benefits. My name is Dave Fultarak. I'm the founder of Acceleres and I'll be your moderator today. I'd like to welcome our guest speakers, James Dalen and Pete Quagliarella. Good morning, guys.
Hi, Dave.
Thanks for joining us today. Could you tell us a little bit about what you'll be discussing in today's presentation?
James, why don't you start since you'll be taking the first batch?
Sure. So today we're going to be discussing the key features and benefits for both Service Manager and Orchestrator in SP1. Specifically, we're going to discuss what the advantages are to moving to SP1 and any considerations that you might experience when migrating to the latest service pack for Orchestrator and Service Manager.
James, thanks for that. This is Dave. Your audio is a little light, so you'll probably want to...
Is that better?
About the same, but it's audible. How about Pete? Can you hear him clearly?
Yeah, I can hear him okay.
Great. Okay. Well, let's get going.
So I think I've lost audio. Can everybody hear me?
I hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Thank you. So, so the key features of Orchestrator and SP1, really they were threefold. First, they wanted to advance or fix any bugs in the current existing integration packs. They also wanted to create some new integration packs that incorporated a lot of the community features that you saw, that folks saw in CodePlex and other places. And lastly, they wanted to create features that would integrate with Azure and Office 365. So those are the three basic tenets that they focused on during the execution of SP1. I think the most interesting thing that they've done is on the Exchange side, where the Exchange, if folks are familiar with the Exchange Server Integration Pack, they've split the functionality out and they've created two separate Exchange integration packs. One is called the Exchange Administrator Integration Pack, which really has all of the administration features that you'd expect in Orchestrator, and they've also added some features to integrate with Office 365 for remote mailboxes or cloud mailboxes. And then they created a second one, which was the Exchange Users Integration Pack, which specifically is really around managing user-type activities inside of Exchange, which is, would be, managing your calendars, deleting mails, that sort of activity, so that you can actually do specific tasks within an individual user's mailbox. The third thing that might be interesting to folks is that they've added a REST integration pack, or representational state transfer integration pack, so that you can seamlessly call REST services. Not only is Orchestrator, as you all know, in 2012, their API is now RESTful, but you can also use this to call, PHP REST services or any other sort of, not just .NET, but any other sort of REST services that utilize that framework. And lastly, the Windows Azure, obviously, that's where they spent a lot of their time, is the Windows Azure Integration Pack, which allows you to manage resources inside of Windows Azure. It allows you to manage the VMs, it allows you to manage the state, it allows you to manage, there's what they call a Windows Azure Diagnostic Framework, or WAD, that you can actually call, and all of these things allows you, and the integration pack allows you to call all of these things inside of Windows Azure. lastly, they added if you utilize the Orchestrator SDK, the latest version of the SDK, I believe it's 7.1, you can create cascading dependencies for Windows, and we'll get into that later, what that actually means, but it's actually a very powerful concept within the SDK development for integration packs.
Awesome. Just one quick thing. We're hearing a lot of shuffling and background noise on the mic, so I'm not sure if it's your mic, James, or it's another person, but if you're in the meeting and you're not speaking, please mute yourself. And James, if there's something going on wind-wise or something, please see if you can manage that.
I don't believe there's anything on my side, but...
Okay, no worries. Sounds like it went away.
Okay. So the integration packs have been updated are the Active Directory integration pack, HP Service Manager integration pack, or the Heal Packet Service Manager, Operations Manager, VMware, and the Integration Toolkit. The Integration Toolkit has been expanded a little bit. For those of you who know what this is, it's a set of tools that allows you to create or customize integration packs for Orchestrator. And besides the cascading dependencies that I mentioned earlier, there's a couple other things they've added inside the command line version of it and the SDK. The Active Directory integration pack has basically all the same activities. They're just addressing bug fixes. Same thing with HP Service Manager. There were some integration issues with HP Service Manager that they've addressed in this integration pack, but the activities are all the same. Operations Manager, Virtual Machine Manager were both up-revved to integrate with the SP1 version of those two technologies. And the VMware vSphere integration pack was revved to address a couple of issues with those integration packs. Are there any questions so far? Or I can just keep moving on. The key benefits for SP1, obviously there's a lot of work that they did, again, on doing Azure integration. There's a lot of work that they did in terms of the Exchange integration pack. I mean, by absorbing the community effort that was out there, they essentially ratified those efforts and made them Microsoft supported. So, for instance, there were 3 or 4 community integration packs that were developed for Exchange that Microsoft has now absorbed and ratified, and so therefore you'll get Microsoft support on those, which is important. They've also expanded the activities for both SCUM and SC VMM for SP1, and they've updated the toolkit. We can talk about what cascading dependencies are now. It enables folks who are developing custom integration packs to specifically decide what data the user sees or what choices the user sees in the activities. So when you link activities together, rather than seeing the entire published data bus, you can create data based on what's happened in a previous activity that only shows the most significant data for that particular, that next activity. And that's really what cascading dependencies are all about. It is to enable you to facilitate narrowing down the choices that can be made in later activities based on data that's occurred in previous activities. I don't know if that means...
Yeah, it makes sense, James. Why is that important, though? How does that help? Who's looking for that feature?
Folks who are developing custom integration packs are actually looking for that feature because there's the data bus has scoping issues because of the amount of data that can be published in any particular runbook. And if you enable activities to scope data as information is collected, it prevents some of the issues with so number one, the global counters and global variables aren't always good mechanisms because they can be changed by every activity. So enabling you to scope data in a cascading fashion prevents that from happening. Does that make sense? I'm not sure I'm being clear here.
It sounds like you're protecting data manipulation, containing it, and
yes.
Yep. Okay. Cool. And I don't want to steal any of Pete's thunder because we're going to get on to Service Manager in a minute, but it's really interesting to look at this with System Center 2012 SP1, the direction heading. You've got increased support for Azure and modern services with REST. And as we move into Service Manager, you'll see you've got chargeback capabilities start to be built in. So what you see emerging is a direction around provisioning modern services, really being able to say, here are our services that are built in the cloud, or it can be private or public, it can be Azure or not, and we have the capability, whether we memo bill or we actually bill for services, to charge back for those services. So we start to understand not just what services we're providing, but what they cost. So that's kind of exciting. We're starting to see the last pieces of the puzzle being put into place to be able to provide a modern service and charge back for it. So that's kind of exciting. So, any other points or questions with regard to Orchestrator there, James?
No, not my side. That was.
Hey, James, it's Pete. Real quickly, I think you and I talked about this in a previous conversation. There are no bug fixes in the Orchestrator Service Pack?
There are. They just haven't documented them. I'm
okay.
I could not find anywhere. I mean, they did some bug fixes on the integration pack when they re-released them, but I can't find the actual bug titles for those bug fixes.
Okay, yeah, I remember us having the conversation. I know a lot of folks are interested in at least on the Service Manager side, on the bug fixes.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to clarify that on the Orchestrator side.
Yeah, for the life of me, I couldn't find any of it. I mean, the release notes are pretty wide.
Yeah, it's worth noting we had a similar issue on the Service Manager side. The release notes made reference to bug fixes. We needed to do a little bit of investigation beyond the release notes to figure out what bug fixes are included, which we will have on a slide coming up.
Yeah, I pinged some of my friends in the Orchestrator product group, but I couldn't get that information. So
yeah,
very forthcoming about that.
A well-kept secret, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna jump ahead. Dave, I think you're navigating for us. Could you advance the slide? Okay. So the new features in Service Manager 2012 SP1. There are really three things here. Dave talked about one of them, the chargeback functionality, which is going to apply pricing for VMM Fabric based on both capacity and utilization. The strategy here, as I understand it, is not real or true charging. It's really more, as Dave mentioned, memo billing. It provides a way of demonstrating to users that are requesting private clouds what they're actually using and what they may be billed, at least the formula per se, which is really aimed at conditioning more so than actual charging, meaning let's condition people not to oversubscribe and then underutilize what they're ordering. So what you're going to get with this chargeback functionality, there's going to be a new node in the admin workspace called Chargeback. And what you're going to be able to do in there is actually set up price sheets. And you've got a little bit of flexibility with the pricing. You can do base pricing per VM. You can have incremental compute pricing too for CPU, for RAM, and for storage. And then you even have some advanced pricing options for high availability, for static IP, and for an expanding VHD. And then you can apply these price sheets to different clouds. And you can even, I thought this was pretty cool, you can even do overrides for specific users. So if you had a particular group of users who you wanted to get a special price tier, you can do that. Now, one of the things that's worth noting is this doesn't tell you what the pricing should be. It just gives you a means of charging. So you're going to have to figure out what your charges are going to be. You'll have to do that calculation. This will just apply those calculations. The output is going to be via a new OLAP cube. So for those of you who've got Service Manager 2012 now, hopefully you've been exposed to the OLAP cubes that allow another means of reporting on your work items and your configuration items. So you're going to get a new OLAP cube, a chargeback cube, and you even get some sample reports, which is nice because they've actually kind of pre-built a couple of different reports. And if you're familiar with the OLAP cubes, then you know that the design there is to actually use those cubes as a data source in Excel and to build a pivot table or a pivot chart. You can even use it in SharePoint. If you've got performance points set up, you can use the OLAP cubes as data sources there and then present the data in SharePoint. So you can do the same thing here with this chargeback data. And as I said, they've pre-built a couple of these reports so that you can develop your reports from there, which is kind of nice. So that's the chargeback functionality. The OpsMan integration, they're actually now putting an Operations Manager 2012 SP1 agent in the Service Manager management server. They're putting one on the Service Manager management server with install. After you do the install, you have to set up or configure the agent with your Operations Manager management server. And to be clear, the agent is compatible with Operations Manager 2007 R2, and then with Operations Manager 2012 and Operations Manager 2012 SP1. So it's something that didn't exist before that I'm sure that a lot of people have been looking for. I don't believe that you're going to be able to put the agent on after installation. I think the agent is only going to be put on the management server with installation of SP1, so that's something important to consider. And then finally, the new software support. You've got support now for SQL 2012 and for Windows Server 2012 and for Windows 8. So you're going to be able to have all your Service Manager databases supporting all editions of SQL 2012. It also supports the SQL Always On feature. And then all the Service Manager roles, with the exception of the SharePoint, the Self-Service Portal web parts, the SharePoint web parts, are going to be supported on all editions of Windows Server 2012. And then you're going to be able to run the console, the Service Manager console, on Windows 8. Okay, so the bug fixes that we talked about. This is the full list. As James and I were saying, it's a little bit difficult for some reason to uncover the specific bug fixes here. We needed to do a bit of investigation on this. There have been 3 roll-ups to System Center so far. Only 2 of them had bug fixes for Service Manager, roll-ups 2 and roll-ups 3. And we've got the list here of the bugs that are fixed in those roll-ups. Now, those bug fixes have been incorporated into SP1. So if you haven't applied these roll-ups. You're not going to need to. You're going to be able to get these bug fixes when you apply SP1. Obviously, it depends on what sort of issue you might be having as to whether these are going to be relevant. The corrected URL links to incidents or activities, the first item here, refers to an issue if you try to put a link in an email notification to a work item in the self-service portal. There was an issue with that, which they've fixed. I think the biggest issue that we've seen so far is the memory leak, which is down toward the bottom. There is a memory leak in the console. The console will continue to consume more and more and more memory as it's open. A console restart fixes that. You can just shut the console down, open it up again. It'll release the memory when it does that. But there is a fix for that. It's in Rollup 3, and as I say, Rollup 3 is now part of SP1. The second to last bug fix there, console performance improved when accessing forms through Citrix. With the absence of a web-based console, we see a lot of clients who are running the Service Manager console in Citrix. So I think that may be an important bug fix as well for a lot of customers. So key benefits. Again, we talked about the chargeback functionality, and as Dave had discussed, this is part of that whole cloud OS strategy, and I think can be very, very useful for customers who are using Service Manager in conjunction with VMM to shaping the way that users subscribe to clouds and utilize them. And then, the ability to monitor the management server now through Operations Manager, I think is another nice addition. We've had a few customers, not a lot, but a few customers ask about Service Manager and Server 2012 and SQL 2012, knowing that they're starting to plan that. I think for a lot of our clients, that's still, again, in the planning stage. They're not necessarily there yet, but it's nice to know that they're going to be able to do that with SP1. And then, of course, we've talked about the bug fixes, specifically that memory leak and the console performance in Citrix. So we did want to talk about considerations. James, you may or may not want to speak to the Orchestrator considerations because, as you and I discussed before this session, there really aren't any.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the integration packs are sort of self-contained doesn't really require any changes on the hardware or software side. So the fixes that they made have really no considerations for Orchestrator at all.
Yeah, that's good because there are a few considerations with Service Manager. So if you're starting to think about SP1, what we would call your attention to, and again, we would, and we've got a slide coming up here that'll point you to the release notes for each of these service packs, which we would encourage you to review thoroughly. But with Service Manager SP1, the console is going to need to run on a 64-bit operating system. And that may or may not be an issue for some of you, but that's one thing that you're going to want to be aware of before you actually go ahead with the upgrade. If not all of your clients have a 64-bit OS, something that we know is going to be I hate to say problematic, but it's something that's going to have to be dealt with some of our customers, is the fact that the portal cannot be installed on a server with some other Service Manager component. That's not going to be an issue for most of our clients' production environments, but several of them have test or dev environments where they've consolidated a bunch of components onto one server just to keep the footprint small. So that means that they're going to need to move the portal, which is not necessarily a significant amount of effort, but it's also not trivial either, particularly if the portal's already configured. We go to some trouble to make sure that we've got the portal configuration isolated in its own management pack so that it is more portable, and we would advise that if you haven't started configuring your portal that you do the same thing, and not just to be prepared for SP1, but just generally if you need to move portal content. It does require SQL 2008 R2 SP1 or later. We've been speccing that for a while, so hopefully that's not going to be a problem for too many of you. And then the last consideration is the upgrade sequence if you've got 2 or more components. This is the published upgrade sequence. And again, this is in the release notes, which we would encourage you to take a careful look at before you actually go ahead with an upgrade. So these are the resources. I know once this gets published, you'll be able to get to this and then to take a look at the release notes, to download the bits if you want. And then James has also included a link to the Orchestrator Codeplex site. There is a Codeplex site for the Service Manager PowerShell commandlets, the SMlets. Which I did not include here, but the SMlets are also, at least a lot of them are now built into Service Manager 2012. So we'll be happy to take any questions if anybody wants to drop a note into the IM window.
You can also unmute yourself if you've got audio and ask directly. Vanessa asks, is the end-user timestamp issue fixed as part of SP1?
And this is the in the portal?
Yep.
Yeah, I believe that's on the list. This second one, Vanessa, timestamp for instance, created through SMTP now properly set?
Oh, Vanessa can't see the slides for some reason.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Okay. I think the short answer is yes, and we'll make sure you get the slides. Benjamin asks, can chargebacks be easily used for charging for idle services, or is it built for cloud services?
Yeah, it seems to really be built for cloud services. I mean, it allows you to put a price per day on a VM, a price per day for cloud membership, incremental pricing for CPU, for RAM. So it's not really designed for for anything outside of that. Now, with that said, I haven't really thought about this. I don't know whether you could, through customization, derive a custom class or class as that would allow you to do something similar for other services. We actually might want to mention we had actually looked at this as a chargeback solution for a customer that was doing some break-fix work and needed to charge it back. We ended up just building it all from scratch because, it just ended up being easier. And some of that was based on that particular customer's requirements.
I have a question to follow up on that. We recently entered into a contract for Azure, and we haven't used it in production yet, but we intend to divide Azure subscriptions into projects, and would like to be able to show back or give the project owner an idea of what their Azure charges are going to be. Is there a reconciliation between the chargeback capabilities and the actual account billing that Azure would do? Do they match up? Are they the same, or would there be discrepancies?
I don't know that there's any sort of reconciliation functionality built into the chargeback functionality in SP1. I don't believe, from what I've seen, that there's actual charging functionality. It really is more memo billing. I think of it almost like, like metering. That's the term that I would use for it, meaning it will demonstrate usage. But what I did not see, and it could be that I'm missing it, but what I didn't see is a means to go in there and actually put a charge in to say, okay, your usage was X, therefore we are charging you Y, therefore your balance is Z.
Well, similar, but when you say memo-based, we call that showback. You're just showing the user what they consumed.
Yeah.
Now, if I showed them that their charges would be $100 even, but then Azure, through their account billing, they would get billed for $150 and $1.10, we would have users that would probably spend 14 hours arguing about 10 cents. And so if it didn't match, there would be more of a downside to actually showing them or giving them an idea of what they consumed if it didn't match what their actual charges would be. That would be my main concern.
Yeah, I follow you. Yeah, and I unfortunately, I can't answer that with any real precision. As I said, I don't think it's going to allow you to do any sort of reconciliation, at least not natively, not from what I've seen.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm getting more of it's a platform for doing so. We're providing the basis of functionality to enable chargeback, but as far as what you're saying, that's what you want, right? I can show you here's your costs, and I can tie them back to your utilization, and it ties out so there's no 10 hours of conversation around 10 cents.
Right. Yeah, the other thing that's missing...
Yeah, this is James. Unfortunately, Azure doesn't expose that as as some sort of API that Service Manager can connect to. All the billing is done, as you well know, is done as a consumption model. And that model is not exposed at all to any external entities, including their own products, unfortunately. Yeah, that's kind of I guess that's really what I was asking, if it's exposed and there's a way to reconcile. Yeah, there isn't, unfortunately not. Okay.
Yeah, the other thing that you don't have is, you have to figure out what you're going to charge for a VM, for cloud membership, for CPU, et cetera. So you have to come up with the pricing. They give you the model. You have to fill in the pricing, which for some may be easier than for others.
Yeah, we've decided to go to an allocation-based chargeback model and not a consumption. Consumption is very difficult. The reconciliation at the end of the month, there's always, like I said, not just charges, but there's so much issues with it that we decided to make it simple. We would just you would be charged on what we allocated you. If you allocated 2 CPUs and didn't consume them, then that's your problem.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Vanessa's asking, she's saying that is the issue of time lag with opening service requests in SCSM 2012 fixed when Link 2013 is installed, or is that fixed?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I think everything, I think you can't see the slide right now, Vanessa, but when you do get the deck, slide number 7 has the bug fixes that are listed, and that is not one of them.
All right. Well, thanks, Pete and James, for a great presentation. I'd like to remind the audience that they can pull down the presentation off of our YouTube channel, so youtube.com/Acceleres, shortly after this presentation concludes. Then also prior presentations are up there. We've got a couple more of these sessions coming up to treat topics. If you are unable to download from YouTube, send us an email at info@acceleres.com, and we'll put it up on the SkyDrive for you to pull it down from there. So thanks for a great presentation. I do appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you. If you can advance to the next slide at the next session. And you can see the set of the next sessions that are coming up on our Eventbrite channel, which is up in the upper right-hand corner of the slide. So thanks all for joining. We'll see you next time on Acceleres Presents.